people like me would learn helplessness from chronic abuse are easier to entrap and screw. Like, yeah, when am I gonna get the get? I'm never gonna get a get. Well, I should be optimistic. I mean, I don't know, there might be a good reason why he took my signatures and my ID copies. I mean, maybe it's not to exploit me, but to actually help me. Bob didn't subject me to any kind of assault. I mean, he just took my ID copies, signatures, and we recited prayers. He saw creative talent. He saw his dead sister. Didn't want to let me go, but he did. He let me go. Barney's got a new favorite, Lebanese girls. Lebanese girls are the new half-Asians. At Waldman, random guys would constantly ask me about the weather in Beirut, and I would clarify that I'm not Lebanese. I wish I excelled at saving myself. When a last name's a lawyer. Lebanese girls. Lebanese girls are the new half-Asians. And by the way, my name is Nadia Shireen Siddiqui, not Mrs. Looney. I would appreciate it if you stopped calling me that.
Hey, how's the weather in Beirut?
I don't know. I'm not from Lebanon, so... I mean, that doesn't prevent me from looking it up. I mean, if you're actually interested in the weather in Beirut, I could look it up for you. I mean, you could look it up yourself. I mean, what would you consider wearing...
So you're not on the Lebanese team?
No, I'm not. Oh, why'd you look so sad? Tears are in your eyes. Come on, come to me now. Don't be afraid to cry. Let me see you through. 'Cause I've seen your dark side too. 'Cause I've changed is what you need.
Deep down, you might still be that great kid you used to be. But it's not who you are underneath, but what you do that defines you.
I'm menstruating again, right on time. I mean, night of April Fool's Day, so... Yeah, I mean, last time it was night of the 5th of March. So, yeah. It's a regular cycle, I guess. POV, Bob is crying on a bench, sitting next to Sherri, with his head in his hands, and she's glaring at me. And I've come to the epiphany that she existed all along. I mean, I joked about her being the invisible woman, and he was like, she exists. And then I was like, oh, so she's with us right now. And then he said, she's not dead. But, you know, she's like, on that bench over there. And then I looked at that bench over there, and there was nobody on any of the benches within my line of sight. And I told him that there's nobody on any of those benches. And then he looked, and he realized that, oh, okay, so she's gone. She's not on that bench anymore because I'm talking to you, and she wants us to be alone together. And I didn't, I didn't believe she existed up until this point because I just thought it was absurd and ridiculous. And then, yeah, and then he kept nagging me about my phone number and email address and other contact information, and initially, I don't know, I was just scared of him. But I also, I kept calling him Dad, very endearingly. So, and that freaked me out too. I mean, it wasn't just that, I'm scared of this stranger, but this, I was also scared of the familiarity. And that, he acted like I was somebody that he's known all his life as well. So it wasn't like it was just me calling him Dad. It was him calling me Andy. So, yeah, Sherri was glaring at me, and I had, I was feeling really guilty because I yelled, we are never going to meet again, and you're not getting my number, and and he had retreated with his hands in the air, his hands up, and he made himself small somehow, I mean, this is a person who's like 6'3.5" and very muscular, and he just crouches and he slouches, and he makes himself small, like physically small. And I don't know how he does it, but he did it. and now that, this incredibly good-looking woman who's really well-dressed and looks very poised was glaring at me, I figured I should go and fix this, because, I had done something bad. I mean, I shouldn't have overreacted like that, but yes, I mean, it was awkward, it was uncomfortable, it was, okay, why do I keep calling this complete stranger Dad, and why does he keep looking at me like I'm his dead sister, basically? Yeah, he didn't tell me that he thought that I reminded him of Andy just then, but, he did keep looking at me like, I don't know, it's just like, it made me very uncomfortable. But at the same time, it's like I was making him uncomfortable. I mean, he wasn't uncomfortable, but I was also, calling him Dad by accident. Ergo, I wasn't just frazzled by his over-familiarity, but mine too. After being glared at for a good few minutes and, standing frozen and confused and Yeah, I just ambled over to them to maybe apologize to him because his head was not coming out of his hands. He was sitting at that bench, on that bench, and you know, his his head and hands were just buried between his knees, and I felt so bad. I felt so horrible. And then, right, so I just went over, and she just kept flaring at me. She was just like, you did this, and you know, it was, I mean, she was sitting next to him, but at like a slight distance. So I don't know if she was patting his back or not. I just know that she was just mad at me. So I felt the need to go over and apologize, at least. So anyway, so I did. I walked over, and then I said, you know, you should be glad. You should be glad that this random stranger that you met in the park, who kept calling you dad, and not just dad, but like dad, like the greatest dad in the world ever, is out of your hair. You know, you shouldn't be crying. You shouldn't be sitting there crying. And of course Sherri's like, full house. And I was like, why are you saying that? Because I didn't really understand what she was saying, because I was apologizing to him because he's the one I yelled at, and even though and I wasn't really looking at her because she was glaring at me before, so I wasn't really sure how to interact with her. But yes, and then, I'm sorry I yelled at you. I mean, that's probably just how you people talk. Like, that's just how like stand-up comedians talk to people, right? Well, I really, really like you. I don't talk like that with everyone I meet. Okay, so I really like you too, but I keep calling you dad, and you keep checking me out, and that's just not gonna work, you know? That's just, it's not just dad, you know? It's dad, and it's like the greatest dad in the world ever, and I have no idea why I feel that way. And Sherri interrupted with, don't you want your kids to have the greatest dad in the world ever? And I was like, I don't have kids. Why does she think I have kids? Where are the children coming from? Where are their children? Where did the children come from? And I was just like freaking out about children suddenly. And then, right, but, and I was like, no, none of my brother's friends' dads. I mean, okay, so my brother's class fellow's dad died, and he had a pretty good dad. Yeah, but he wasn't like him, so I was just like trying to figure out why. And then she's like, a full house, and then I was just like, I can't, we can't do this, you know? I don't know. You can't just meet someone randomly in the park and then become best friends forever. That just doesn't work, you know? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's just really awkward and uncomfortable, and I didn't want to follow through on this because it was just like, oh, okay, I'm going through something very weird, and it's making me not feel very good. Have to change is what you need. You can change right next to me. Grow as we Look, I'm not from here. I have no idea what you're saying. Are you saying Full House? Is that what you're saying? His show has a full house? And she's like, yes. And then I turned to Bob, and I'm like, well, okay, Bob, you can't go around giving people tickets because your show has a full house. It's fully booked. It's sold out. Your Ticketmaster wife has spoken. And then, like, she's not my wife. She's my ex-wife. And that's disputed. You know, that's disputed because she never got a get. That's him dressed like an old lady. Cross-dressing as Mrs. Doubtfire, and he deliberately blotted his face with the sun. Oh, maybe she did get a get later. I mean, after July 21st, 2012. I don't know. I mean, I wasn't there after July 21st, 2012. I mean, except for, like, I mean, I met him twice after that. Once when he was dressed as Mrs. Doubtfire, and another time when he was dressed as a military metaphor, you know, with, I mean, he was wearing a ridiculous number of cufflinks and blue contact lenses, and at a FedEx, in 2015 as well. You really shouldn't trust us. I'm a lawyer, he's an actor, we both lie for a living. I don't trust him. Why would I trust him? Even his initials are BS. He gives me $10 million a month in alimony. I have 3 daughters with him. Why would I be on your side, Nadia? I'll corroborate whatever lies he cooks up about you. We kept taking turns playing Cameron Diaz's Jude in The Last Supper, so, I mean, sometimes she was Jude and sometimes he was Jude, but I was always the evangelical girl who might be homophobic. I mean, okay, I'm not, but, right, but I was pretty rigid about, no, I'm not going to marry someone who's a Muslim. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. This is not happening. I was basically naysaying almost continuously. He was treating all of my shutdowns like challenge accepted. How do I become Muslim? Is there a dance that I could do? A song that I could sing? A chant maybe? And I was like, actually there is. And I was just like literally putty in his hands. I mean, just falling for these ego stokes, you know? He knew all about Shahada before I mean, because he corrected me afterwards, because before, I mean, after making fun of, like, after saying la 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 la, etc., and then he's, like, correcting me, he's saying, no, you're supposed to start with, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah, you're supposed to testify, you're not just supposed to say, la ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah, and I'm just like, you knew all along, so what did you need me for? And later, he's like, I'm Muslim now, I don't care for consent, Sherri, yank her by the arm, and then Sherri's like, he thinks I'm Igor, but I'm not, and I was like, Igor, oh, so that makes you Dracula, that's what you get for calling me as white as a vampire. And they're explaining to me that, they didn't mean that as an insult, like look at Twilight, vampires are hot, there's nothing wrong with being called a vampire, called as pale and white as a vampire, hypopigmented by scleroderma. Anyway, so they're explaining that to me because I was disappointed that I was no longer a beautiful Jewish woman. And he's like, Dracula's wives, onward to the convent, up. But yeah, Sherri had my back. She was
In this particular
instance, on this particular instance, she had my back. But then at other times, she was like, Pop, she's getting away. And I'm like, what do you, like, I feel like I've bilked him, I can hoodwink him. But then, she spots me and I can't make a run for it. I want to toss in some gems from Chris Rock's special. Okay, so in nice neighborhoods, the women are unemployed and riding kiddie bikes, and so I think it was like right before noon, all the women come out and they're riding on their kiddie bikes and they're carrying babies in strollers, and they've got strollers and stuff, and then in a bad neighborhood, the men are unemployed and they're carrying strollers and riding kiddie bikes and looking really, and smoking. I'm not sure if the women are smoking or vaping in supposedly nice neighborhoods. God, it's just, I mean, yes, smokers, like shisha should be banned because it's really bad for lungs, and it's known to be extremely bad. It's worse than smoking. Vaping is worse than smoking, and shisha is worse than smoking, and I think vaping shisha would be the worst.
And
Beyonce worked at Burger King, she could still marry Jay-Z, but if Jay-Z worked at Burger King, he would never get Beyonce. It was another, like, sordid fact that, Chris Rock, identified. So you didn't like Full House, what show did you like? I told you, Family Ties. No, I meant, like, not in that genre, like, what show did you like? Quantum Leap. Yeah, there was this Ray Charles episode in which, the protagonist was slowly going blind, and, yeah, I really liked that. But, yeah, I was the main guy in it. You were not the main guy in it. What was Quantum Leap about? It was about time travel. Yeah, you really like time travel. Yes, I do, except when you're psychically meandering through me and time traveling through me. That's a little awkward and feels like a lot of privacy infractions. Yeah, okay. But you were the main guy. Yeah, so the show, so one guy is the time machine and the other guy is traveling. Scott is traveling, and I was, the person he was traveling through. And is this the boxing episode? Because that gave me nightmares. Yeah, the boxing episode for Quantum Leap, and this X-Files episode in which organs were being gambled, and oh god, it's just almost an allusion to what's going on with Uyghurs in China. It was but it was about a Chinatown in the U.S. It was just gruesome. Yeah, and a lot of X-Files nightmares involving aliens drinking my pee, but that had more to do with, I guess, Daddy and his, fingering, coming, licking antics. It's just grossness. What's relevant? $1 million a month in alimony.
Would you consider wearing a two-piece bikini without a sarong?
Sure, if I have the Mary Richardson Kennedy abs for it. I mean, he said that I'm going to punch his abs to develop his as well as mine.
So what I'm seeing is him standing next to this blonde woman who kind of looks like you, but she lacks your, a va-va-voom factor or something. And maybe it's because she's blonde, but I don't think it's you.
Maybe he's in a film with an actress, because I don't know. I mean, I don't think he would be okay with me wearing a bikini. As in just a bikini without a sarong, like a string bikini. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. So I don't think he'd be okay with that, because just a few minutes ago he yelled,
So I want to burqa woman.
after deciding that we both prefer being behind the camera over in front of it.
Better do something creative quick. Look, Nadia, you're sex, and sex can't survive the white-collar workplace.
There's an episode of How I Met Your Mother that aired in October 2010 titled Unfinished, which makes the audience privy to the real initials BS's manipulation tactics. Yeah, so first, he wants Ted to get a job, right? But at first, he treats Ted like the most important person in the world. He touches his hand, he brushes his hand, right? And yeah, like I'm remembering the handshake, the right-handed handshake, the limp right hand between both my hands, because
Sometimes
this person didn't have the decency to just simply say left-handed before the handshake.
Sometimes
and he
you
just literally just like, his limp right hand way down on both my wrists.
No matter what
I mean, it was just, and I also felt like the autistic kid in Mercury Rising, you know, look at me, you know, just constant forced eye contact, and just like, I guess I didn't want to participate in because I had my voice, you know.
All the wings of my dreams.